Let me kickstart the conversation with Tapan. Um, as a four-wheeler manufacturer, if you can just give us a broad idea about what are the hindrances that the segment is facing when it comes to transitioning towards electric cars. I'm asking this also because the penetration levels in electric cars is much lower than what we are seeing in two-wheelers. So if you can give us a broad idea.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'd like to get into a detailing about how the EV journey has been for passenger vehicles. First of all, about 2 years back, the penetration used to be only 2%, and the volume used to be hardly, 5,000, 6,000 per month. Then from 2% it grew, and our penetration is 4% last calendar year. But if we're talking about the volume, it has touched 17,000 per month. In fact, the registration figures is 177,000 approximately. So what it means is that the EV growth story in passenger vehicles, it has happened just a couple of years back, but the momentum is quite fast. Having said so, yes, the opportunities are very high. There's no doubt about that. Having said so, there are certain, you can say hindrances, which you rightly said. If we can overcome them jointly, all the stakeholders, OEMs, government, everybody, then obviously the EV growth penetration can be first much higher. One of them is, of course, charging infrastructure. That's very, very important. I would say that's the most important anxiety which the customers has. So here, I must say that the government has got a lot of favorable policies. But yes, more has to be done by all the stakeholders to have the charging infrastructure as fast as possible. And when I'm talking about charging infrastructure, it's not just the numbers alone. The upkeep, the overall, the charging station has to be running. It has to be also eco-friendly, all this. And second also is the range anxiety. Customers still feel that ranges, but then with good technology, the ranges have been improving. Whatever we have seen EV ranges about, say, 3-4 years back, now the ranges have actually improved a lot. I think the opportunities are there, the growth momentum is good, the percentage penetration is increasing, but yes, a lot more can be done to improve it.
When you talk about range anxiety and the improvement that has been done in the last 3 to 4 years, can you give us an idea from where to where has it reached? What was the situation 3 to 4 years back when it comes to electric cars, and where has it reached now?
See, for example, nowadays the electric cars, if I talk about for a customer, the price is very important. So suppose if a customer is going to spend around, say, 25 lakh rupees. Today, the range which he's getting, say, a car like our VinFast VS7 is 500 plus. Whereas that was not much lower, much lower about, say 3 years back or so. So that way, I think the ranges are improving and all. And also if I talk about, like, one of the things which, another thing which customers has in his mind is that what is going to have with my battery? Now here, that anxiety can be removed by OEMs, like if I talk about our company, VinFast, we are giving 10 years battery warranty. Okay, so that's a huge benefit which we are giving to customers. And also customers has got another, when we are talking about hindrance, customers also believe that what's going to have with the maintenance of our cars. So there are OEMs responsibility also, like for example, our company is giving free maintenance for, say, 3 years. So these are the things which I think OEMs, government, all other stakeholders can really do a lot to see that the hindrances which are there can be mitigated to a great extent by giving good warranty, by giving a good network. Another thing very, very important is that, of course, most of the OEMs are, or rather, it's but natural that most of the OEMs will be concentrating in the metros because that's where the volume is. But what we have studied is, yes, metros and tier 1 cities, the volume is very high. But tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities also, the opportunities are also there. But what happens to the customers if they buy the cars? So what innovative thing which VinFast did was that we have our dealer workshops, but we have also tied up with third-party service extensions, a good number of them, where customers can get some repair done, which are not major, minor repair. So all these things, whatever is in the customer's mind, these, if they are removed, to a great extent, the hindrances can be removed. This is what I would like to state what, as an OEM, what we are trying to do to help customers adopt our EVs.
Saurav, I will come to you on the topic of maintenance and reliability. You are into the commercial vehicle segment, electric commercial vehicle segment. How important is reliability and maintenance there, and how are you ensuring that when it comes to, let's say if a sale is done today, how are you ensuring it that the customer is assured of the quality, 5 years, 6 years down the line?
Yeah, so so from a commercial vehicle standpoint, I think one of the most important factor that at least when we started our company 8 years back, we looked at was that range and charging anxiety is one of the most talked topic. But when it comes to commercial vehicle, the vehicle utilizations is very, very high. People are driving 100, 120 kilometers in the smaller three-wheeler, four-wheeler vehicle every day. So that you quickly add up to 100,000 kilometers in 3 years, 4 years if somebody is on very regularly driving like 300 kilometers, the 300 days a year. So when you're thinking about 100,000 kilometers sort of use case cycle, it's very important for an OEM like us to understand what kind of degradation the powertrain, the batteries, the thermal abuse will go through. The newer sort of the supply chain that has been added in EV, other than what has been well understood, which is your chassis, suspension, brakes, overall vehicle fatigue that obviously over the 30, 40 years India has been, I would say, excellent at. So that, for us to do that, for instance, in battery, we were one of the first ones to bring liquid cooled battery pack in 2021. Our three-wheelers, it was still, nobody was talking about back then. And our idea at that point of time was that with liquid cooling, you can reduce the thermal stress, and the batteries, which would otherwise degrade in 3 to 4 years, will degrade over, like, just say, 7 and 8 years. Now, in four-wheelers, we were one of the first ones to bring in the cargo segment, we introduced 200 kilometers on a single charge. I mean, obviously, the idea was that from an anxiety point of view, 200 kilometer on a single charge is a good sort of a last mile use case. You charge once, you drive through, and you come back. I mean, of course, the vehicle had a fast charging setup as well. But then we also gave like 2 lakh kilometer on a 7 years warranty on the vehicle. The whole idea was that how is the customer experience over the 7 years, over the 5 years. Today we are working at even 10-year life cycle of battery packs in commercial use case. And again, that 10 years of a commercial versus 10 years of a passenger, two-wheeler, four-wheeler, very different because sometime your usage, you would drive 100 kilometers, sometimes you would drive 20, 30, 40 in a regular city driving. But in commercial, you're throttling 80% on the battery every single day. So that's something that I would say over the 8 years, we invested a lot in our R&D capability. We have invested close to 1,500 crores that we have raised over a couple of rounds. We have scaled up plant in Palwal where we are manufacturing close to 1,000 vehicles a month at this point of time across three-wheeler and four-wheeler that we are selling, and capability to go more.
Tarun Mehta from Ether was here yesterday, and he talked about that the role of testing when it comes to ensuring reliability. He also mentioned that a lot of testing protocols he had to develop himself only. Is your experience quite similar when it comes to commercial vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, so lot of, I would say, standards. Again, it goes back to, if you look at the auto industry, that the way Indian auto industry has evolved over the last 60 years. So a lot of it has been written for the ICE framework, the fatigues, the supply chain, the components. And when you looked at the EV, your batteries, your electronics, your powertrain, all of that completely changed the way you're looking at your vibration, you're looking at your thermal stress, you're looking at your overload abuse, you're looking at the vehicle crash, you're looking at all kinds of safety parameters. And I think government has been doing a great job in bringing newer sort of every time they see policy or let's just say a certain sort of whether it was in battery, we have seen like at least 2-3 of them toward safety, toward degradation. I think those are the things that have, but still as an OEM we are not only worried about 3 years, because when you're building a brand, you're thinking about, and especially in commercial, the livelihood of the customer is dependent on the earning that they're generating from the vehicle. They don't have an alternate that today if I don't have my vehicle, I'll do something else. I mean, and when you're thinking from that lens and you're looking at 10-year ownership, so we have to often think beyond 3-year, 5-year warranties, and we have to think that how can these vehicles last. Like we have an internal saying कि यार लोहा गल जाना चाहिए, but ये आपका power train and battery चलते रहना चाहिए. Like, so until unless you have that kind of mindset in building the product, you won't succeed in commercial. And to do that, then you have to build test cases accordingly. So like the vibrations, we will do 3G of vibrations of the battery pack. Maybe you won't get that much of fatigue in. If we are saying 1-ton vehicle, we'll probably test with like 100%, 200% overload on the vehicle. There are vehicles that we will just build to sort of at the end of like maybe 3 months, it will probably be sold in scrap. And so we have done all of those because fatigue in electric commercial vehicles shows up upfront. It won't like show up just after, like a chassis crack might show up after 100,000 kilometer, but anything wrong in your batteries or motor might show up in 100 kilometer or 500 kilometer. So that.
Raghav, you have established around 100,000 charging points across India. Can you, and as Tapan also mentioned that charging points is one of the key or lack of charging points is one of the key factors that is bothering customers when they are choosing electric vehicles. Not so much in two-wheelers right now, but especially in cars and others. Can you tell me what are the factors right now in play when it comes to establishment of charging points across the country?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me, Deepak. Now, if we talk about building a charging network for a country like India, right? There are 2-3 things that we have to firstly look at. What is the vehicle types, right? Like that are being sold in India. About 90% of all the vehicles are 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers, right? So firstly, that market was what we as a charging network catered to over the past few years. This, in the last couple of years, I think the 4-wheeler market has been picking up drastically as well. So we've started catering to that market now as well. But if you look at, where charging is happening, okay, there's 2 segments to this as well. There's private charging, where most of the vehicles that you see are usually charged at home or in the workplace, right? And then there's the public charging infrastructure that people use in an emergency use case. So that, if you ask me, only about 10% of all charging happens in a public charging setting. Okay, of course it's different for a fleet use case or something like that. But now, we do have certain government policies that have come in. The PME drive scheme, of course, that's one of the big one. We have about an allocation of about 2,000 crores from the government for deploying EV charging. I think a lot of the state governments are starting to now, expand on that, reach out to other CPOs like ourselves to start to deploy. But if you ask me, what is the #1 hindrance for why our charging network may still need some work? It's probably maintenance and uptime of these chargers, right? Like there have been chargers that are deployed, but not a lot of them are being maintained really well, right? And if a charger is not maintained, or if there is downtime on a charger, it's basically a non-performing asset, right? And there's only so many non-performing assets that you can have. So uh, one of the most critical things, again, for having an effective charging network is not just deploying, having an operational workforce, a trained, skilled labor, technicians who can actually go and maintain and keep these chargers running over time.
But when it comes to charging, a lot of discussion focuses on the fact that charging stations should be established on highways, on points where on points when people are traveling from city to city. Uh, what is your opinion about that? Do you think that the focus should right now be more within the cities, or is this discussion point quite correct? That we should be focusing on highways.
Yeah, I think it's both, right? Like you need charging infrastructure within cities, you need charging infrastructure across highways. Uh, uh, that is what will really lead to consumers buying EVs, right? Now, the one, if you ask me, one of the bigger reasons for why someone might not move today from a ICE world to the EV world is probably because of charging anxiety, especially like for intercity trips, right? Like if somebody does want to travel, there are, today if you see, there are many routes where, charging infrastructure has already been deployed, okay? It may not cover like a majority of the highways in India, but a significant chunk of them do have good charging infrastructure as of right now. Uh, but yeah, it's not just the highways that require charging, right? Like I said, people need to charge within the city as well. And like I said, people need to charge mainly at homes, okay? And unless you deploy home charging, you're not covering like 90% of the charging use cases.
Tapan, I'll come to you about the government policy. What role do you think that government policy can play? There is PME drive scheme, then we have cafe norms. What role can they play when it comes to pushing up electrification in India?
Yeah, so government has a very big role to play in driving the EV sales. One, of course, is to pull the customers towards EV, and also to push OEMs also for making the EV. If I talk about pulling the customers towards EV, central government particularly has a very, very favorable policy of 5% GST, unlike the other ICE where it is 18% start. So that's a huge benefit which government has given us of 5% as far as this. Not only that, even many state governments, they have got reduced road tax on EV. Some states, in fact, has got 0% tax. And some has got much lower road tax on EV as compared to ICE. So that way, what happens is that customers are pulled towards EV. As far as motivating the OEMs to adopt EV, CAFE 3 is a very, very important norm where EV, if suppose OEM is having more EV on their portfolio, then yes, it becomes very easy to meet the CAFE norms. Of course, the PME drive and the other schemes, PLI schemes and all, they are also very, very hugely important things for for driving the EV volume. I think both the government has got an extremely important part on that. Not only that, if I talk about just few months back, I think if I'm not mistaken, the latest budget, government has given some SOP on charger also. I think the tax has been reduced and the cost of the chargers has reduced. So that means that it is going to help in overall developing the ecosystem. Also, if I talk about the trade pact which the government has recently concluded with the EU, with the US, that is also going to help in sourcing the components which are used for EV at a much cheaper rate. So I will say directly or indirectly, government has got a very, very big role, which government is doing also for overall developing the EV momentum in India.
Okay. Saurav, I'll come to you again about the government policy only. You, along with Ather, have asked the government to open up the PLI scheme for players like you. So along with PLI, what is your opinion about PME drive, CAFE norms? CAFE norms are not applicable on commercial vehicles, but you can if you can just talk about a PLI scheme as well as the role of PME Drive.
Yeah, so I'll agree with Tapan over here. I think in general, government is the center of the entire, if you look at the transition, they are the, I would say, key driver that can move the transition. And they have done multiple policies over the last couple of years that have pushed the electrification forward as well. If you look at the electric commercial vehicle, which I have closely sort of watched over the last, I would say, 8 years, both as an active sort of, as a startup working toward contributing, and also looking at how segment has grown, not just in the three-wheeler, but recently with the four-wheeler as well. What we have seen is that the initial push that came with the FAME policy, and then the FAME turning to PME Drive, I think your rate of electrification has gone substantially up. If you look at from 3 years back to in three-wheelers, cargo, it is roughly around 22% here and there. Three-wheeler passenger in the last 2 years has gone to almost 30%. Four-wheeler, in the very early stage, I would say four-wheeler cargo, which is roughly around going from 1 to this year around 3%. So first ride of that push toward electrification, definitely that has been very, very helpful. In fact, in the recently, as your percentages have been coming down and the subsidies are removed, and even with the commercial, I would say GST in the ICE lowered down, where the TCO for EV became a bit more, I would say, challenging. The electrification of the industry is still holding and growing. So that means that the case for commercial EVs does make sense. It stands on the commercial sort of understanding, because these are people who are buying it, like I mentioned, the economics has to make sense then only. So that it works. My view when it comes to PLI, which was the second part of the question, which we have mentioned publicly as well. So along with FAME, the government had introduced PLI policy as well. Our view on that was that for as much as support for incumbents and everything is there, we are not opposed to any of that. What we wanted was a level playing field for startup like us as well. Because look, I mean, the PLI scheme was built to further the electrification at a national level in a manufacturing depth, and also bring India, make in India at a global scale, right? And when you look at something like that, you need to reward people not just by age. I would say, yes, there are OEMs, incumbents who have spent 50 years, 60 years. You can't take away that what they have done for the country, what they have done for the employment. But then there are also people like us who have spent last 8 years. We have invested 1,500 crores, as I mentioned. We have raised 200 million. We have invested 1,500 crores. These are real money that has gone into either building supply chain, either building talent, either deploying these vehicles, capacity. We are producing thousands of vehicles every month. So when you're deploying that and we are walking that conversation, we believe that we should also be part of that. And our ambitions is also to take India to that global stage. That how can, like today in this 8 years, we have proved like within our four-wheeler cargo that we launched literally 5 months back, we were selling close to 50 vehicles before that in a month in a four-wheeler. Your electrification, like I said, was around 1% back then. Today we are selling in 4 months to 400 vehicles a month. That has not happened just because Euler is putting behind a marketing might or the network depth that like incumbent enjoys. It's because it has hit the right chord in terms of the value proposition that the customer is looking for and the product that it is delivering on ground, like whether it's in your range, whether it's your performance. So when a company or a startup like us who is equally pushing the boundary in terms of innovation, in terms of product, and we are saying it's superior as compared to any global, if you look at a one-tonner product out there, then we should also be part of the policy. and we should also get some advantage so that there's a level playing field for us, and we can contribute equally, because our intent is to make India a global, I would say, a commercial hub in terms of electric commercial vehicles. So that is my submission, but I understand like government has their views, and we would like to work with them on this.
Raghav, if you can give me an idea about your experience of working with state distribution companies. You have to talk to them regularly when it comes to establishing charge points. How it has changed over the years, and what role has PM E-Drive, which also has around a 2,000 crore allocation for charging points. What role has it played in changing that tone of conversation?
Yeah, I think it's starting to get better now in terms of ease of just getting loads, for setting up charging points, not only for CPOs but also for regular individuals. Anyone who wants to set up can now apply. There's a single window process that is now underway. However, when we look at the PME drive scheme, I think the state governments are now mandated to really deploy chargers, by themselves, pretty much from that 2,000 crore allocation. And over the past month or so, I myself have met 3-4 different state government transport authorities who are really trying to move the needle on that. And these state government transport authorities are working directly with the state electricity boards as well. So I think that tie-up has started to become much more closer. So the overall, I would say that just getting into EV charging is just starting to become easier and easier.
And you deal with a lot of OEMs, whether it is two-wheeler makers or four-wheeler makers. There is one thing that I wanted to ask you about the respect that they're able to give to customer in terms of quality. I have seen that a lot of foreign legacy brands are not able to succeed when it comes to electric vehicles, but Indian legacy brands have been able to pick up the market very quickly. Why is that happening? I'm asking you as you are not an OEM yourself, you're sitting outside of it, but you deal with them regularly.
Yeah, for sure, right? If you look at the four-wheeler space, we do have people like a Tata or a Mahindra who've been doing pretty decently. We, of course, have VinFast here as well. However, if I look at something like the two-wheeler market, we've seen the homegrown Indian startups, Ather, Ola, all of these guys have done a significant job in terms of capturing market share early, right? They followed the Tesla model and kind of were able to move on that. I think I would put Euler in that group as well, right? What I feel is some of the legacy players did drop the ball, right? And one of the reasons for that might simply be because they're so entrenched in the ICE world that EV vehicles, EVs are not the number one thing in their mind, right? It's almost like a afterthought in some cases. And I mean, that's just not going to work, right? Especially because Indian consumers today are extremely smart, right? They know what they exactly want, and unless you give them something extremely functional, they're not going to be, buying your products. Yeah.
Tapan, Indian consumers are very smart, especially when it comes to buying cars. You talked about battery, and there is a model that a lot of companies have gone for, battery as a service model. You talked about battery warranty. Can you tell me can you elaborate on the part on how does this reassure the customers, and how keen are they on this factor? And also related to that, how big a role a software plays when it comes to electric cars?
Yeah, so battery and software customers are giving a lot of importance to. So when we are talking about battery, the anxiety in customers' mind is what's going to happen to the battery. So that way the warranty becomes very important. Like VinFast is giving 10 years battery warranty in both our models. Second, you have talked about BAS, battery as a service. That's also another tool where customer can also have. So the fundamental thing in all this is that if you want to make a customer buy an EV, it is not just the on-road price of the vehicle which alone will drive the customer. Is the overall cost of ownership in the life cycle of the vehicle which is going to drive the customers towards vehicle. That is very much prominent in EV, and that's what is taking place. What it means is that overall you need to offer a package to reassure the customers. Customers are very intelligent, as you have mentioned, that Indian customers are extremely intelligent. So when they are going to buy the product, they will see that, okay, I have spent so much amount of money, what next? If I am going to keep the vehicle for, say, 5 to 8 years, which normally this, then what will happen to the battery? What will be happening to the vehicle? So even for us also, the vehicle warranty on VF7 is 10 years actually. We have warranty on paint, so many things. That is one. Secondly, also is the package of service. Like, what will I do for the service? That again, as I told, free service becomes, very, very important for that. So overall, when I'm talking about how we can make the customers adopt the EV, it is very, very important that as OEMs, we have to really, really concentrate on the finer things which are actually going to bother the customers in the customer's mind. And we need to remove that and see that in terms of financing options also, like how we can give a very, very good financing schemes to customers so that the overall, the value proposition improves. There are a lot of other things other than like what we are talking about BAS. Other than BAS, we have got leasing options, we have got subscription options. A lot of things are there where as a package we can offer to customers, and then customers can get that reassurance. What is good thing which I will say for VinFast is happening is that competition is improving in EV space, and that is good for us. Different OEMs are giving different value packages, and that way what happens is EV adoption will improve, and that way there will be an inflection point that from 4% it is going to keep on improving when many OEMs will compete. And that competition is good for a brand like VinFast, where we are only and only an EV player. We are not into ICE, we are not into any other fuel mode. And that's happening how the value packages are being offered.
Okay. And Saurav, I will come to you about maintenance. Have you also created any, are you also providing any buyback service? And Tapan, to you also, have you also introduced any buyback plan like a few other OEMs have done?
Yes, so we have a buyback plan. We are encouraging customers to sell their ICE and buy EV. So it is like you give us the ICE and we'll give you the EV, and the proposition is very, very attractive. That we are having this buyback scheme.
Is resale still a concern when it comes to electric cars? Resale value I'm talking about.
So basically the electric cars, if you see, they have been, maybe 3 years has been there. So till now the resale price has not been established yet. It is still this. But what we are doing in VinFast is that we have got a very good resale value price. 75% of the value we are assuring if a customer is giving the vehicle within 2 years. In fact, if it is 5 years, then it is very, very high, almost 55-60% we are giving. That is basically to reassure the customers that if you, in case, want to sell your cars between 2 to 5 years, you are guaranteed of this particular value of the car. And that's very, very attractive. And that also plays a very, very important role in customer adopting the EV, because they know that their resale price is being protected. If they want to sell to any other third party, anything, and if they don't get the price, they come to our dealers, and we will be offering and we'll be giving the guarantee to that particular price. That's very important.
Saurav, is the situation similar in commercial vehicles when it comes to buyback, resale value?
So let me actually merge this and the previous point that you had made, previous question around the government. I think this is, so whether asset sale or financing, battery separately financing, all of this today, if you look at financing of electric vehicles, especially if you look at commercial vehicle, I think this is one area where government can do excellent work. And that is even more important than the subsidies and some of the things that you can give. Because in commercial vehicle, your EMI is the actual decision maker for the customer. What is the EMI of the vehicle? Because they will calculate their earning, saving, and EMI, and that's how they will understand if the EVs will make sense for them or not. Of course, when banks or NBFCs, they are underwriting loans, they are looking at your loan to value ratios, they are looking at how will I finance these batteries, how would I think about terminal value, how would I think about the secondary value if I repossess all of these vehicles. I think this is one area where government can build excellent frameworks for whether how to treat electric vehicles. I mean, priority lending, I think, a lot of people and everybody would have spoken about this for a year. But even if not that, but like how to figure out values, I mean, where I think homologation agencies can step in and help reassurance, okay, these vehicles will, batteries of these will last 5 years, will last 7 years, will last 10 years. So instead of each bank having their own sort of underwriting capability, they can standardize and start financing these. Other than that, of course, with OEM, like we would have subscription model where we would have worked with financer. We would have seen with Euler Assured is a platform where some of the, I would say 2021, 22 vehicles would have come after 3-4 years, and we would have seen those exchange of hands happening. And those vehicles are still fetching one of the highest sort of like, even the buyback numbers that we had at that point, people had not sold, they had actually found much better price outside. So that actually gave us a lot of confidence, which is earlier point that I was making, that more than range anxiety, I think 1 lakh kilometer ke baad ka jo anxiety hai, what will happen to battery, what will happen to the vehicle, that is the core essential point for us at least. And that drives a lot of our conversation internally also when we design the product or when we figure out how to test our vehicle, how to test an onboard charger when your fluctuation in the grid is going to happen overnight in 3 years. I mean, an onboard charger for a 3-wheeler or a 4-wheeler costs 12,000 to 14,000, which is equivalent to EMI of the vehicle. If it goes down, there's a very high likelihood that it will go to an NPA case. So how do you protect or do R&D to where you can build a product that can sustain those kind of conversations?
We started from the point of hindrances when it comes to, for the EV transition. I will like to end the conversation from what makes you hopeful. So Raghav, I will start with you. What makes you hopeful that India will be moving towards EV? If you can tell me 1 or 2 factors, and then I will go to other panelists.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that, India will transition and hit its climate goals by 2030, right? What really makes me hopeful is that, like I said, again, it comes down to Indian consumers, right? Like, they're extremely smart. EVs, you travel at like almost 1 rupee per kilometer. It's hard to beat those kind of unit economics, right? The current TCOs might be like slightly higher, but as battery tech evolves, I think that's going to come down drastically, and it's just a matter of time, right? Like, and you might have heard a lot of people talk about alternate technologies, hydrogen fuel cells, etc., etc. But if you ask me, the biggest problem with any other alternative technology is that electricity has already been distributed. You don't have to distribute anything, okay? Electricity is available everywhere. So with any other alternative technology, you need to do that, and so it's just not a comparable, system.
Saurav?
I think it's going to happen. There's no question on if or that. I think the question is about pace. How quickly can it happen? I think like in commercial, like I mentioned, it makes economic sense. And you have to just look at the data as well, like when whether subsidies pulled out or there, or the GST reductionized. It's still standing, holding, and it's growing. So that's a clear proof that some of these are working. We have proven that these vehicles can also be built in a similar price point to an ICE and can deliver equivalent sort of value. So those are also proven. So it's not that EVs are going to be very, very expensive offering. You can match almost that. So I think the question is mostly going to be about paces. I think the charging infra, as this is scaling, as the more competitions are going to come and people are going to offer customer a good value proposition, they are going to switch. The pace can change depending on what our composition, but I think we might meet 3 years down the line and we'll be surprised with the numbers that we'll see.
Tapan?
So if I talk about last year, the entire EV, it was nearly 2.4 million. And if I talk about the CAGR for last 6 years, it has been 63% overall if I talk about the EV. So I'm very hopeful that it is a real growth. The growth is sustainable and it is going to grow. And whatever we discussed as panelists here, the opportunities and whatever are the hindrances which we can overcome, if we can do that collectively, I think there will be an inflection point. Once we reach that, it's going to boom. And that's what I'm very, very hopeful. By 2030, when the government has also given a very, very much achievable target, but if all the ecosystem takes place, I think we are very hopeful that we can reach that target.